We are here today with Mike Frerichs, Democratic incumbent for State Treasurer. Thank you for being here, and we invite you to give an opening statement as to why you're the best candidate for this office.
Great, thank you very much. I've spent the last 4 years as State Treasurer. Would like to have another 4 years. So happy to come before you. We hope that the next 4 years be continuation of some of the policies we started in the first. The first job of the State Treasurer is to be the state's Chief Investment Officer. We've come in there, we've made some changes. We've come in, we've asked the General Assembly to give us greater flexibility in where we can invest. And that and some of the modeling we've done have allowed us to more than quadruple investment returns earned in this office. When I came in, we were earning about $4 million a month. We've increased that to about $23 million a month. So we're very excited about that. We know that every dollar we can bring in interest is a dollar that the governor and the General Assembly don't have to raise in taxes, or a dollar in cuts they don't have to make to important state services. But we also believe that we should give people the tools they need to invest in themselves. And some of those tools are college savings. We came in, we took some programs that were middle-of-the-road rated. We've made them the highest-rated programs in the country according to Morningstar. We cut fees in half, which means millions of dollars more will stay in families' college savings accounts rather than going off to Wall Street bankers. We set up a new program to help parents with children with disabilities save and give their children a brighter future. We're in the middle of setting up a new program to help people save their own money for their retirement, something everyone knows they need to do, but to make it easier for them so that they can have a retirement with dignity and so that they can enjoy their golden years. And at times, we stand up and fight on behalf of consumers in this state. Like with the life insurance industry. I came in, we discovered through our Unclaimed Property division that there were some life insurance companies that weren't paying out death benefits when their policyholders passed away. We thought that was wrong. We fought to change state law and have helped to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in unpaid life insurance benefits that belong to people in the state of Illinois. You know, there are other things we want to do, some of these programs we want to continue to improve upon, and that's why I'm asking for another 4 years as a state treasurer.
Okay, great. You kind of started in on this a little bit, but the main charge of this office is the safekeeping and investment of the money, the public's money. So what changes have you implemented that you've deemed successful beyond the ones you just mentioned?
In terms of investing money, it was a difficult time. We went 2 years, more than 2 years without a budget in place. That sort of unpredictability makes it difficult to have some long-term planning. But we did a lot of analysis. We did a lot of modeling that allowed us to increase our average monthly weighted maturity for our investments. Everyone knows that if you put money into a 30-day CD, you will get a lower interest rate than if you put into a 1-year CD. We've increased the length that we're investing for to get more money. We also realized there are some investment vehicles out there that were conservative, that were very safe investments, but would earn us a higher rate of return. We went to the General Assembly and got approval to invest in some vehicles that we couldn't previously. You know, the General Assembly gives great restrictions on where the treasurer can invest. We have to we invest to preserve capital. People like it when we tell them we quadrupled interest returns, but they really despise it if you lose their money. So there are limits. We don't invest in the stock market with our state funds, but we have increased the number of things we can invest in, and that's allowed us to have a very significant increase in returns for the state.
So just a procedural nuts and bolts curiosity. So does that money is it reinvested then? The earnings, is that reinvested? Does that become available?
It becomes available to the General Assembly for budgeting purposes. So when we've increased, from about $45 million a year to over $200 million a year, that's over $160 million more that can be spent on state services, or $160 million that doesn't have to be raised in taxes. Now, that does not solve our budget problems.
Right.
When you're looking at billions of dollars in unpaid bills, that doesn't solve that. But if we're going to get out of this situation, if we're going to solve our financial concerns, everyone needs to be working together. And the part we can play is to bring in more money and interest.
Okay. You touched on this briefly in your intro. What additional changes or reforms would you like to implement if you get another term?
Well, so I talked a little about our investments. We're always looking at ways to improve and to maximize returns. But with our tools that I described, college savings, we have created some of the best programs in the country. Our Bright Directions program, our advisor sold plan, is silver rated. Morningstar, it's the highest rating they give. There are only 2 programs in the country that are silver rated. Illinois is one of them. With their direct sold program, Bright Start, we are gold rated, the highest rating they give. And there are only 4 programs in the country that are gold rated. We're the only Treasurer-run program in the country that is gold rated. So it's difficult to imagine improving upon that much more. But where we can improve is by signing up more families. We've made this a real goal. I mean, I'm really proud of the increases received. At a time when the state of Illinois has had 8 credit downgrades, we have had 3 rating upgrades from Morningstar. I am proud of that. But this all for naught if families aren't saving, if families aren't putting their kids on a pathway to success. So what I'm more proud about is the number of accounts that we have opened since I've come into office. Having improved rating helps with confidence from our citizens to invest their money with us, and that's helped us to have double-digit growth in terms of dollars under management and number of accounts for the last 3 years. Because we know that if a young person is aware they have a college savings account in their name, they are 7 times more likely to go to college. They're 7 times more likely because a college savings account is a message. It says, you're smart. I believe in you. You are college material. And when kids feel that someone is invested in them and believes in them, they're much more likely to work hard in high school. So what we're going to do is we've changed the way we market these programs. That's helped us to increase things, and we're going to continue to make changes there as well. We set up a new program to help people with disabilities, led a 10-state consortium in order to negotiate the lowest fees in the country. Illinois will have the lowest fees of any able program in the country, because so will Iowa, and so will Minnesota, and so will Indiana, and Rhode Island, and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and North Carolina, and so will Alaska, and Montana, and Nevada, and Colorado, and Kansas, because other states have joined us since the original 10. We will negotiate the lowest fees in the country, but now we have to sign families up. We have to convince them this is a good thing to do. Families who know about this are overjoyed. It's going to allow them to leave something behind for their children they could not before, to give their kids who need something extra. They're to leave something for them. I could talk about this for a while. The final thing is we're in the midst of setting up our Secure Choice Retirement Savings Program. This is a program that's going to help about 1.2 million people in the state of Illinois save money, save their own money for their retirement by just making it easy. Everyone knows they need to save, but it's just, there are impediments. People put it off and they don't do it, and they find themselves close to retirement with next to nothing saved for retirement. So we think the answer is to help make it easier through workplace deductions, but that program is currently being rolled out. It's going to roll out over the next year and a half, and so if I get reelected, our hope is that we can really set this up and be a model for the rest of the country.
The governor did recently veto some legislation regarding that program that would make it optional instead of mandatory, which is what it's supposed to do. Will that affect the rollout at all?
It's very unlikely.
Okay.
It is an annoyance. It is not understood. I believe that legislation passed unanimously through the House and the Senate. For some reason, the governor has chosen to veto a lot of my bills this year. I think he's vetoed 6 bills. In the past, he hasn't. He's vetoed bills that passed unanimously or near unanimously. I don't know what I did to upset him, but I'm not going to let it bother me because I realize it's election season. That probably has something to do with it. And veto session will be after the election. We'll come back, we'll go to the people who supported it originally and ask them to override the governor's mandatory vetoes. And I believe at that point, when the politics is out of the way and people can focus on the policy, they're going to vote for it just like they did the first time when it passed unanimously. Also, as a mandatory veto, I don't think there's any way anyone believes the governor's mandatory veto is going to be upheld.
Okay.
The speaker is not going to allow that to happen.
Okay. You did mention the governor has vetoed a number of your bills so far this year. Any idea what's led to that? I mean,
no.
Why he's focused specifically on you this year?
No, we've sent letters asking him to sign these bills, as we have in years past. I mean, the one with Secure Choice is especially a head-scratcher because it passed unanimously, because it's taking a program and it's basically amending it to make it more favorable. We've listened to our constituents, listen to our businesses, and listen to our Secure Choice Board, which has appointees from the governor. Our Secure Choice Board, which has 4 gubernatorial appointees, also was supportive of this. We have passed updates and amendments to the Secure Choice Act the last 2 years, and the governor has signed those without making this amendment. The only thing that makes sense is it's an election year, and sometimes people change their policies on governing in order to get votes. I don't know. We sent letters. We received no real explanation as to why they're vetoing so many bills. But, you know, we have roadblocks put in front of us all the time.
Okay.
We can choose to focus on them and get angry, shake a fist, or we can chart a course around them, and that's what we're going to do.
While we're on the topic of the vetoes, I guess I'll just continue
Sure.
on this path. He used another mandatory veto to block you from purchasing a building so that your office could consolidate leases. I believe you leased 2 buildings here in Springfield, and you wanted to buy a building, and you said it would save, I believe, $420,000
Yep.
each year. You have said that you believe his action was unconstitutional. Explain why.
Well, because it was a mandatory veto. He took that bill and he rewrote it in a way that I think is unconstitutional. The vetoing, if it were a straight veto of our ability to buy a building, it would not be. But the way he mandatorily vetoed it, we believe was.
Okay.
But that's not what doesn't make sense to me. That one passed nearly unanimously. We currently have 2 leases. We're paying about $800,000 a year on those 2 leases. We can bring all of our employees under one roof, buy a building, have it paid off in about 6 years, and then save the state about $420,000 a year. This makes financial sense. It should make financial sense to everyone out there. But if you look at the old Barney's furniture building lease, you know, I guess if you think that's a good deal, you probably think ours is a bad one, because they entered into a 5-year lease paying about $2.4 million for a building they could have bought for about half of that price. I mean, that is fiscally irresponsible. This is why people are distrustful of government when they hear these things. Why would you spend a lot more to lease something that you will never own when you could buy it outright? Now, if the governor has a reason for that, I've not heard it. I've not heard a compelling case made. And so if he really does believe that we ought to be signing leases to politically motivated people in town, if you think that's good government for someone who agreed to shake up the system, to root out corruption, well, then I could see he wouldn't like ours, because ours saves a lot of money. But I just suspect as well that this is election year politics, and post-election, when people calm down, we can focus on policy, we'll override his veto.
Okay. I will say that we live here in Springfield. We're not necessarily always thrilled when another building goes off the public tax rolls. You know, a significant amount of property in Springfield is, because it's public building, is not taxed here. I guess convince us why this makes fiscal sense specifically for Springfield to do this. Well,
it makes fiscal sense for the state.
Okay.
The state is running up a big backlog of unpaid bills. The state of Illinois has had to increase taxes and talks about increased taxes further. This makes sense because this will hopefully save us some money that can be used to pay our bills, that would relieve pressure for a tax increase. And so we think this makes sense for all citizens of the state of Illinois, and citizens of Springfield are citizens as well.
Okay.
And I think if there's a problem with the state of Illinois, with the city of Springfield, then there should be discussions about payment in lieu of taxes. I live in Champaign-Urbana. I'm well aware of this. The city of Urbana has something like 30% of their properties off of the rolls, with proposals to take more off the rolls.
Yeah.
I think there's now a proposal that former Comptroller Munger has been pushing to make fraternities and sororities not have to pay property taxes. If you did that, City of Urbana would be out of control, and the few remaining property owners would share an even greater burden. So I do think that you have to be cognizant of the amount of property taken off the rolls, but I think there are other solutions rather than the state spending more money.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm just, I've asked everybody this, all of the candidates for this job. So how is it you came to be a Democrat?
You asked Jim Dodge how he came to be a Democrat?
Yeah, it was close. And then what are a couple of principles that you'd identify that kind of embody that? And how do they play out as you carry out the role of treasurer?
Okay, that's a good question, a good series of questions. So how I came to be a Democrat. When I first ran for office, I grew up in a small town, Gifford, Illinois, population 800, majority Republican town. And people ask, why are you running as a Democrat when your family are all Republicans? I tell them my family are not all Republicans. My mother's family, they're all Republicans. But my father's family were Democrats. And so you had to talk about principles or why you're sort of Democrat. Is I believe Democrats are the party of opportunity for all. Now, the other party may say that they are, but if you look at my grandfather, who grew up on a tenant farm, he was one of 13 children. His father died when he was in 6th grade. And he had to drop out of school. And he was on a farm, There was no electricity in rural to his farm. It was a tough way to live. Well, FDR and Democrats said companies are providing electricity to cities, but not to rural areas. All Americans ought to benefit from this technology, and they pushed rural electrification. And my grandfather appreciated that and said, I'm an FDR Democrat. And my dad grew up on a farm. They're still tenant farmers. Didn't have enough land to really support my dad, his brother, grandparents. So my dad went to go work at a local grain elevator, started driving a truck, joined a union. He's a Teamster. And the Teamsters provided him a good middle-class living. My dad didn't have a college education, but he was able to provide for his family. We were not rich, but we weren't hungry. And I think it was Democrats who fought to give working people better wages. My dad appreciated that. I did well in school. I had opportunities. I got accepted into a lot of different schools. But when it came time to look at the bill, my parents said, we can't afford it. But I was able to make it work because I was qualified for things like Pell Grants and for federally guaranteed student loans, which allowed me to get an education. It was the Democratic Party that pushed things like Pell Grants and federally guaranteed loans in order to give young people like me opportunities. And so why did I run for treasurer? I think I have a tremendous opportunity to provide opportunity for more Americans, for more Illinoisans, whether it be our college savings plans, which provide opportunity, or opportunities for parents to leave something behind for their kids with disabilities, or people the opportunity to have a retirement with dignity and to enjoy their golden year. These are the reasons why I run for this office, and the reason why I'm a Democrat. Did I answer all of your questions?
I think, yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Transparency is something the public should expect from all of its elected officials.
That they should.
What steps have you taken while in office to increase transparency?
If you want to go to our website and click on the vault or go to our IllinoisVault.com, what you'll find there is transparency unlike you've never seen before in the Treasurer's office. Now, part of that is because I have a commitment to doing this. I said I would do this, and part of it is increased technology. So if you want to see where we're investing, how we're investing, we're going to check on our returns. If you're a visual person who does not look like looking at spreadsheets full of numbers, you can create graphs, pie charts, bar graphs. You can look at this in a variety of different ways, and a lot of people have started doing that since we came into office. One of the other things is there have been accusations before I came into office. This office was being used for political purposes. Former employees had charged that. I came in, one of the first things I did was sign an executive order saying we weren't going to do that. I wasn't going to take contributions from my employees. They weren't going to do any government work or political work on state time, and we have followed through on that. We also want to make sure that we are doing all of our responsibilities and doing them well, and so I came in. We conducted an audit of the office, and we discovered some things. We made some improvements to our vault, to our physical vault, to make it safer. That came as a result of that audit. We also, we discovered that there was a program that the Treasurer's Office was in charge of that had not issued a single dime. It's a program called Charitable Trust. It's been created a decade ago. It's funded not by taxpayers, but by nonprofit fees they pay to the Attorney General when they register. It had been growing money in this account for years. And no one had given any of these grants out. It was a grant-making fund. And we set up a board, approved, this board agreed what sort of things we were going to fund, and we've started giving out grants to social service agencies because at around the same time we discovered this, state government shut down. And social service providers, social service agencies weren't being paid. So we said, what can we do? Rather than pointing fingers or calling names, we decided that we would roll up our sleeves and do what we could to help out. And so we've given out about, I think we're approaching $2 million in grants to nonprofits throughout the state.
And when was that? You said shortly after you got into office?
Yeah, we conducted the audit right after we came into office, and it took us a while to make sure that the program, the administration, was above board. There have been a lot of state grants that have been given out in the past. Sometimes they're given to politically connected people or questions about how decisions are made. So we are open, transparent, above board. We put a board in place about who is getting these, and it has been a well-run program.
What additional measures would you like to implement when it comes to transparency if you were given another term?
I'd say there's always improvements you can make. We're always working with other state treasurers to see what they're doing well, what we can borrow from them. I feel bad when people will thank me or congratulate me for a lot of the positive changes we've made in the office, as if I sit around and think of all of them myself. I'm smart enough to listen to good people, smart people, and recognize a good idea, and then give a vision to my staff for how we're going to implement that. And so we're very active and involved in the National Association of State Treasurers, and we're coming up with good ideas and working with those state treasurers. And so, I feel very confident because it's a priority for us, and because we reach out and listen, we're going to find other things, innovative ways of increasing transparency in the next term.
Is there any technological needs in the office that you'd like to address?
There are always technological needs,
What are a couple of them?
but there are also fiduciary limits into what you can do. So, we've been working with other financial offices on increased ability to communicate between our offices to reduce some of the paperwork out there. That ultimately will save the state of Illinois a lot of money, but it's expensive. We're in the process of that.
That's a computer system or okay.
Yeah, because there are a lot of silos in state government, and those silos, when information is shared, is frequently done in paper, and things are typed and printed out, and they're retyped and entered in the system somewhere else. We ought to be able to talk with each other better than this. We think it will save money. And so we've been trying to break down those silos. And one of the ways we've been able to do that is with unclaimed property. We're sitting on over $2 billion in unclaimed property. We know it belongs to people here in the state, but some people just won't claim it for whatever reason. It's a hassle, it takes too much time, think it might be a scam. I get frustrated with the number of people who would come to me and say, hey, Treasurer, you've got my money. And I say, great, we'd love to give it to you. And they say, it's too much of a hassle. So we brainstormed, how can we make this easier? One of the things we did is we used technology. We're using the power of the internet for people to upload documents. They don't have to mail them in. That saves us a significant amount of time with people who just job was to open the mail and to sort these claims and put them in file folders. Now they get uploaded directly into our database. We made some big changes there with unclaimed property and brought in a new system in the last 4 years. Excuse me.
And you recently you announced plans to automatically return.
Yes, that's where I was leading to. So we also use the internet to do a search so that you don't have to go find an old bill and an old address to confirm you once lived there. We can do a LexisNexis search, and if we determine you live there, we'll just pay you. But even that, some people wouldn't go to the trouble of doing. And so we talk about breaking down some of those silos. The Department of Revenue has a list of everyone who's paid taxes in this state. And when they submit their taxes, they submit their address, they submit their social security number. We have a database full of a lot of Illinois citizens and residents with addresses and social security numbers. It took us legislation to allow the Treasurer and the Department of Revenue to talk and share information. We passed that last year. It took effect January 1 of this year. After this tax season, we started working with the Department of Revenue to identify those people. And so I maintain that if Joe Smith at 123 Main Street with XXX social security number paid his taxes in April of this year, and we have an unclaimed property for Joe Smith at 123 Main Street with XXX social security number, we can just send him a check. That's all the proof we need that Joe still lives there. And that's what we're doing right now. We are trying to make things more efficient. So we fulfill our job of returning money to people. We do it in a way that saves them time. It saves paper and the environment. It's the right thing to do. These are the kind of reforms we brought into the office, and we're not done. We think that there are other ideas out there that just haven't yet been thought up.
I just wanted to clarify, that went into effect of January 1 this year, but was approved last in 2017.
The legislation passed in 17.
Okay.
The governor signed it in the summer of 17. The effective date was January 1st of 18. And then we had to go through a tax cycle. We had some work to do, and so now checks are actually being cut.
Okay.
Letters are going out. So first, it's possible someone could have paid their taxes and then moved. So we send a letter out notifying them a check is on the way, it's legitimate, you should cash it. But two, we mail it in case it's returned as undeliverable, then we know someone has moved and we won't bother to send a check to someone who's no longer there.
That legislation, though, it's a claim of $2,000 or less, correct?
Yes.
Why that cutoff?
Because we're fiduciaries for these funds. The same thing with our fast track, it has to be $500 or less. We have claims up to $1 million. We just don't think it's right to send $1 million check to someone without knowing that they're there. But some of these smaller claims, they're $40, they're $69.13. It was a refund for something that was never claimed. You know, these people haven't claimed them for a while. We'd like to get them off our books. We'd like to get back in their hands. But if it's $50,000, we think they can probably spend a little more time verifying they are who they say they are.
Okay.
So then the 2,000 was chosen somewhat arbitrarily.
Okay. And when does that start?
It is in the process right now. Letters have been going out for the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
Checks should be going out very soon.
Okay. You've recently used social media to advertise the iCash program.
Yeah.
And your Republican challenger for this office, Jim Dodge, said he thought it was too close to the election, and that you should tell taxpayers how much it costs to do that. Do you think it's ethical to advertise for this program so close to the election?
Yes, because we've been doing this for the last 3 years. I came in. My opponent made a complaint that perhaps we were giving away too much money. That's my job. My job is to give away this money. You shouldn't stop doing your job right for the election. But I'll tell you that we were doing this throughout the summer. He just started making this an issue right before the election. We've been doing this for a while. And we've done it because it's effective.
You mean on Facebook?
On social media.
Okay.
So we didn't do this in the past, but that's increasingly where people are moving. I'm sorry to say this to a newspaper, but people are collecting their information more and more off social media. We still advertise in newspapers. We're going to find people where they are. And so we advertise on Facebook and on other social media platforms. And last year, we set a record for the most number of dollars returned to people in the state of Illinois. 2 years ago, we set the record, $155 million. Last year, we broke it. We returned $159 million. This year, we returned $180 million. And next year, we think we're going to smash that record again. And we did it because we started thinking differently. And we found that by doing social media, not only did we increase the total number of dollars, we doubled the number of claims processed. Because we can do geo-tracking through Facebook and social media and through Google tools to help find the people the money belongs to, or the money likely belongs to. So it's being much more targeted, and that's resulted in that, and our introduction of Fast Track, which makes it easier for people to claim, means we doubled the number of claims processed. And we did that without bringing on new staff, because by using technology, we're able to do this much more quickly and much more efficiently. And I will not apologize for that. But I would just ask my opponent, who's complaining that we're doing our job and returning records amounts of money, does he want the state to hold on to the people's money? And if he's complaining now, why wasn't he complaining 3 months ago, a year ago when we were doing this? I think if you want to look for an answer where the politics is involved, as I said earlier, we're in election season. People say things they don't normally say right before an election. After the election, I think when we focus on policy, people realize this is a policy that returns a lot of money to people.
Okay. The fiscal condition of the state in general is not great here in Illinois.
Yeah.
Your office does not have a role in the budgeting. That is the General Assembly.
Nope.
That is the governor. Do you think your office should have a role in budgeting?
I would love to. The Constitution doesn't give me that.
Yeah.
That doesn't stop me from offering advice. But what I've chosen to do is to work within the system to try and reach out to my fellow constitutionals or members of the General Assembly. I have not held a lot of press conferences attacking. I mean, that just doesn't mean we don't call out people, but we've chosen to engage in letters and conversations. I find you get a lot more done. You're much more likely to find people to work with you if you work with them in a cordial manner. But at some point, if they're just not going to work with you, you have to speak out. And that's one of the things we found. We tried working with a lot of life insurance companies to get them to pay out death benefits, and many of them were compliant with us. But when we found one that just would not work with us, one that actually sued us, then we decided to take this fight public. It's not where we started, but it's where we ended, because I believe very strongly that if you sell a life insurance policy to someone, if you promise to take care of their loved ones when they're gone, you ought to keep that promise. And that's what we helped them to do.
And I apologize. Can you remind me where there's right now there is a certain year they have to return back to, and you've been seeking what?
So
expand that, correct?
we originally introduced legislation to go back, I think, to the year 1992 was original legislation. Well, that first year, there was just too much resistance. We agreed to pass legislation that proactively, going forward, life insurance companies have to check their list of policyholders twice a year against Death Master file. And if they find someone has passed away, they have to notify their beneficiaries. This is not a radical concept. We got that passed a couple years ago. The governor vetoed that legislation. We overrode his veto. But we also, part of that agreement was we create a task force to study this issue. And we had individual after individual come in and talk about how their loved one passed away and they were never aware of this. They're never aware that they were a recipient. And they said, is it fair that people who passed away 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that their loved ones will not be paid? So we filed legislation to go back to the year, I think, 1996. Well, there were lots of arguments made of how onerous that would be, and finally, when we were having trouble reaching agreement, I said, look, I remember 1999, when everyone was worried about Y2K, and every business out there was updating their computer systems to become Y2K compliant so that things wouldn't crash on New Year's Day. I know you all updated your system in 2000. Don't tell me it's too big of a burden to go back to the year 2000. That's our final point, and that's the legislation we passed. Okay. So they have to look back to the year 2000 and see if any other policyholders died between today and then, and if they did, they have to notify their beneficiaries and pay them.
Okay. And have you thought to expand that at all? Or would you like to expand that further?
I would like to.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in this case, I have to work with the General Assembly on legislation. What we have to do now first is go in and audit the companies out there going back this far. I think when we do that, we'll clean up a lot of unclaimed policies in their books. And for some companies, it'd be great if someone owned a life insurance policy and it passed away in 1973, and their loved ones never paid, that we go back for them. But there are some problems, there are some limitations for companies with their records not being up to date. And so we think that this is a reasonable compromise.
Okay.
So is there some sense of how much money's been returned through that?
Yeah, so there were some companies that voluntarily agreed to open up their books to our auditors. It was somewhere around 22 different life insurance companies voluntarily agreed to do this, under some pressure. And with those 22 companies, we discovered over $500 million in unpaid life insurance benefits. That was $550 million. Now, this was part of a nationwide effort, and nationwide, about $7.4 billion in unpaid benefits were discovered, and they're going out to loved ones now. Now, we think that there are hundreds more companies out there selling policies in Illinois, that some of them are smaller, so they won't have as much, but we think there are potentially hundreds of millions of dollars more that will be able to reunite with the loved ones of their policyholders.
Is there any work federally, national level to pursue similar kind of legislation or not?
There's efforts state by state. I would say the insurance industry in this country and in many states is very strong, and they fought a lot of these efforts. They fought against our efforts, but we ultimately prevailed. I think we had right on our side.
This seems to come up every election cycle in the last couple of years. The
Consolidation of
Yes.
the Treasurer and Comptroller's office.
Yes.
Wow.
You've been there before.
You've been there, yes.
I've been there before. I campaigned on this issue in
I believe
2014.
you said you would want to blow up the comptroller's office. Is that what I heard from someone else?
Okay. So let me explain
I don't mean
for the
literally.
record.
I don't mean literally
Yes.
blow up.
No. Explain for the record. I was talking to an editorial board,
Yes.
and I said, what we ought to do is we ought to combine the two offices. I voted to allow the public, when I was in the state Senate, I would allow them to vote whether they wanted this to happen or not. And if they did vote that way, I said, I think we should merge the offices. We have to be smart about how we do it. The comptroller is opposed to this idea. She says, well, because there's certain responsibilities that should not be put under one roof. They should be segregated. And I agree with that. You should have checks and balances. But what I think you could do is you could merge the offices, take some of those responsibilities that are incompatible, and take them out of the new office and give them to the Auditor General or the Secretary of State or the Governor's office. You could give them somewhere, put them somewhere else, and you would still maintain these controls and these checks and balances. Now, an editorial board asked me, how would you do that? I said, well, you'd have to put a plan in place. We tried to work with Comptroller Munger and said, what would it look like? And jokingly, I said, well, I'm the treasurer. I'm partial to my office. I would blow up the comptroller's office and take some of the senators' parts and put them into this office, and other parts put separate. That is not a plan. We don't have a plan to blow up the comptroller's office. The way you're going to do this is by having people in both offices work together to integrate and to make sure you have internal controls into place. So I said this in a joking manner, because we don't have a plan for doing this. We tried to work to create a plan, but I don't think you should have a plan coming from one office. The plan should come as a result of two offices working together because they know their office is better. Or, the General Assembly could direct consultants to come in. You could work with, I think the Civic Consulting Alliance would probably donate their time to find a way to merge these offices in a way that has proper protections in place. And that's what we tried to do when we came into office. Okay. We didn't find a lot of cooperation in the Comptroller's office when we came in, but let me just be very clear. There is no plan from the Treasurer's office to blow up any other office, but I do think you can merge the offices. You just have to be smart about that, and really the only way it's going to happen is people work together on this.
Okay. You mentioned efficiencies as one reason to do that. Is there cost savings you visualize from this?
Yeah, I think you could find cost savings, but I also believe in democracy, and I run into people all the time who tell me that they would like to do this. And if the public wants to do this, we should let them have a say in this, and I believe in that. But I do believe, even without merging them, you can find cost savings. So at a time when we were hemorrhaging millions of dollars or $1 million or $2 a day in interest payments, we came up with the idea that, well, we have this money sitting in funds for dedicated purposes. You can't use that money to pay down that backlog of bills, but I'm in charge of investing this money. And we're currently paying 9 to 12% interest on unpaid bills. I said, well, we'd like to invest in that and earn 9 to 12% interest. That'd be far better than we can earn right now. But we also want to save the state money, so we put forward legislation that will allow us ultimately to invest at 3.5%, which is higher than we're making now, which is lower than the state is paying, and we would keep that interest in state funds. The real answer is for the state of Illinois, to pass balanced budgets and to pay down their backlog of bills, and then you don't have to have these workarounds or Band-Aids or fixes. You're just not paying that interest out. But until that happens, we'd like to be part of the solution. And so we worked with the Comptroller's office on this legislation, making sure it worked so that she could pay down bills and save the state interest payments. And that kind of cooperation between our offices is probably going to save the state $100 million. This is what we try and do. We try and find solutions. It's really easy to point fingers and to say they're not doing their job, they're running a backlog of bills. It's a little more difficult to find solutions that help with things.
Do you have an estimated amount of money you think it would save to combine the two offices?
We've discussed this before. There's been a number bantied about, but when I came into office, I discovered there's never been a study conducted. Nothing that.
If you found one, I'd like to know because I couldn't find one.
Nope, I've been unable to find one. Okay. So I can't give you a number, but I can tell you that I think we can save money by doing it. How much remains to be seen. It depends how you choose to do it. And what we tried to do is we reached out to the comptroller at the time when I came in and said, let's work together. If you're serious about merging the offices, let's do it. But rather than just going to the office, to the General Assembly and saying, merge our offices, I'd like to go forward with a plan so that people can see what it looks like. They can see what they're actually getting. And we reached out to a group of consultants and auditors who were doing pro bono work for the state of Illinois when we came into office and asked if they would help us with this. Because, quite frankly, I think when a politician says, here's how much money I'm going to save you, there's some skepticism. But if you find some independent professionals to come forward and say, we have studied this, we've worked with multiple office holders, we've put forward a plan, we can show you on spreadsheets how much money it's going to save, then it's much more likely to earn the trust of the public and much more likely to happen and to happen more efficiently without surprises. That's what we would like to do.
Okay. I'll play devil's advocate with you and say it's better to have two offices and two different constitutional officers overseeing the state's various monetary functions.
Sure.
Convince me I'm wrong.
Well, I don't think my plan, as I described to you, is incompatible with that. There are financial responsibilities that shouldn't be under one roof. But you can merge these two offices, and you have other elected officials already out there that could take on some of that responsibility. Who's to say that the Auditor General can't have additional responsibilities assigned to them? Or the Secretary of State, which already has lots of responsibilities, couldn't take on some of those incompatible duties. And then you would still have two elected officials who are dealing with financial issues. You have segregation of duties, but at the same time have a net reduction in total number of elected officials by one.
Are there specific areas you think either the Auditor General or the Secretary of State could pick up?
So there are some that are incompatible. This is really something that ought to be worked out with professionals, with the current office holders and whatever office holders out there that might assume some of those responsibilities.
Okay. It would take a constitutional amendment to get this done.
Yes.
When would you want to see that in front of voters?
Well, it is too late
For
this ballot, which I found ironic that one of my opponents, was arguing for this after the deadline had passed to put it on the ballot. So I think the next possible time you could do this is 2020.
Okay.
I think that gives us plenty of time to conduct a study, to present a plan to the General Assembly, and to present a plan to the public of what it's going to look like. It's one thing to say, let's merge the offices. It's very different to say, okay, who is going to be responsible for which functions? How many people are going to be there? You know, what kind of savings you're going to have. If we can do that, if we have cooperation, we put forward such a plan, I think it's more likely to make it on the ballot and more likely to pass.
Would you want the General Assembly to put on the ballot, or would you want to go for more of a petition drive to get it on there?
The General Assembly is the easier way to do it, and I think that if you make a compelling case to them, if you show them what it's going to look like, then I think that's probably the best route to go.
Okay. Either of you have?
I just as kind of a point of interest, so you served in the General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you found the difference to be as a statewide officer as opposed to a legislator?
The obvious answer is you're an executive, you get to make decisions. In the General Assembly, you have ideas, and then you draft those ideas into bill form, and then you take them through committee, and then you take them through the Senate as the whole, and then you sit and hope that it makes it through the House, and the governor signs that legislation, and that whole process takes time. It takes many months. As an executive, I came in and I decided I wanted to improve our college savings plans. I sat down and talked with our advisors and said, our investment managers, and said, we're going to make some changes. We made them. Some things have required going to the General Assembly to get approval, like ABLE. We had to get approval to pass that. Was able to make that work. But in terms of increasing our investment returns, we asked for permission for some new investment vehicles that we could invest money in, but we also made changes that didn't require convincing anyone else. And so the big difference is if you really want to affect change and you want to do it quickly, you don't have a lot of patience, an executive office is a much better place for that. I've enjoyed that. And that's, we did with our college savings. That's what we have done with setting up our secure choice board. And we worked with the board, but didn't require nearly as much consensus building because I think the public expects results. And I think we've delivered in the 4 years we've been in office, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to deliver for another 4 years.
All right, we thank you for meeting with us here today and invite you to give a brief closing statement as to why you believe voters should give you another term as state treasurer.
Yeah, I think the voters of the state should, when dealing with an incumbent, should look at their record. And that's the one way you can tell what someone's going to do. It's very easy to put forward promises, to say that I think we should merge this office when previously you were opposed to it or you called it an election employee. But I think you need to look at what they've done. And when we come in the office, we have dramatically increased our investment returns. We have set up new programs to help people have a brighter future. We have retooled old programs to make them better, top in class. And we've shown that we're not afraid to stand up on behalf of people here in this state. And that's what you'll get in another 4 years if Mike Frerichs is reelected as state treasurer. I want to do more of the same. We're constantly looking to make improvements in our unclaimed property, with our financial education, with our investments and our investment tools, and I hope to do it for another 4 years.